If your last name is on this list, your ancestor wasn't just Osage. They belong to a specific bloodline whose name still marks which family, which band, which piece of history you descend from, and most people carrying these names today have never been told what they mean. These 10 rare Osage surnames appear in treaty records, tribal rolls, and oral histories stretching back generations before Oklahoma existed. Stay until number 1, because that surname belongs to a bloodline so thoroughly documented that its lineage can still be traced today. 10 names, 10 bloodlines. Number 10 begins now. Number 10. Tallchief. A name that entered the rolls as a literal translation of an Osage title held by men recognized for standing above others in council, not a metaphor, a functional description of rank within the band structure. The Tallchief family carried this distinction through generations of Osage governance in the Indian Territory era, and the name later became known nationally through descendants who carried Osage identity into entirely different arenas of American life. If your name is Tallchief, your bloodline once described your ancestors' actual standing in the room where decisions were made. Number 9. Mathews. Not a name of European origin despite its anglicized form adopted by an Osage family, whose lineage is documented across multiple generations of tribal rolls, and whose descendants included recognized voices in preserving Osage language and governance history during the 20th century. If your name is Mathews, your bloodline includes some of the people who made sure Osage history was written down at all. Number 8. Big Horse. A name built the way many Osage names were descriptive, earned, tied to a specific man's reputation rather than inherited abstractly. Families carrying this name are documented within specific Osage bands recorded on the allotment rolls of the early 1900s, a period when band identity and family lineage were formally recorded in ways that still allow descendants to trace their specific line today. If your name is Big Horse, your bloodline was recorded at the exact moment Osage identity was being redefined by federal policy, and it survived that redefinition intact. Number 7. Rogers. Anglicized, but behind it sits a family line documented among Osage negotiators during the treaty era of the 19th century, when band leadership meant sitting across from federal officials and deciding what the nation would concede and what it would refuse. Descendants of this line appear repeatedly in agency records from the 1870s, the decade the Osage were forced to relocate to their current reservation in Oklahoma, a move the tribe itself negotiated on unusually favorable terms compared to other removals of the era. If your name is Rogers, your bloodline sat at the table during one of the few negotiations where the Osage secured lasting advantage. Number 6. Pawnee no Pashe, a name carrying 2 distinct threads inside it, the kind of documented dual heritage marker that appears across Osage family lines, shaped by intermarriage and alliance with neighboring nations. Families carrying this name are recorded in early reservation-era rolls, their specific band affiliation preserved in agency documentation that lets descendants trace not just an Osage line, but the exact alliance history their ancestors carried into it. If your name is Pawnee no Pashe, your bloodline is a documented record of 2 nations becoming one family. Number 5. Rivard. A name tied to one of the most consequential ceremonial and political roles in Osage governance during the early reservation period. The recorded holders of this name served in positions responsible for maintaining the ceremonial structures that legitimized band leadership itself. Documentation from this era shows the Rivard line maintaining that role across successive generations, a continuity rare enough that tribal historians still cite it as one of the clearest examples of hereditary ceremonial standing surviving the transition into federal oversight. If your name is Rivard, your bloodline held the responsibility of deciding who was allowed to lead. Before we continue, if you're finding this useful, subscribe to Origins Decoded. Every week, we uncover the history hidden inside the names people carry without knowing what they mean. Number 4. Mongrain. A name descended from a French fur trader who married into an Osage family in the early 19th century, one of the documented unions that shaped how Osage bloodlines absorbed outside alliances during the height of the fur trade. Economy. The descendants of this union became recognized members of the nation in their own right, their name appearing on official rolls not as an outsider's addition but as a fully integrated Osage family line, one whose descendants held leadership positions in tribal governance well into the 20th century. If your name is Mongrain, your bloodline is proof that Osage identity was never about bloodline purity. It was about who the nation chose to claim as its own. Number 3. Bacon Rind. a name belonging to one of the most consequential principal chiefs in modern Osage history, a man who led the nation through the discovery of oil beneath their reservation lands in the early 20th century. The event that made the Osage, for a brief period, among the wealthiest people per capita in the entire world. Bacon Rind negotiated directly with federal officials to protect tribal control over mineral rights, a fight that shaped Osage law and governance for the century that followed, and that direct descendants of this line still reference as a defining moment in tribal sovereignty. If your name is Bacon Rind, your bloodline fought to keep an entire nation's wealth in Osage hands. Number 2. Big Heart, a name tied to a documented act of resistance during the darkest chapter of Osage history, the murders carried out during the 1920s oil wealth era, when outsiders systematically targeted Osage families to seize headright inheritances by marriage, fraud, and violence. The Big Heart family's documented refusal to be intimidated during this period, and their insistence on federal investigation into the deaths within their own family, became part of the evidence that eventually forced Washington to act. If your name is Big Heart, your bloodline didn't just survive one of the deadliest targeted campaigns against a single native nation in American history. It helped expose it. And now, number 1, the bloodline whose documentation isn't partial. It's complete, generation by generation, in a way almost no other Osage family line can claim. Number 1. Standing Bear, descended from Chief Standing Bear, whose leadership during the early reservation period is documented in unbroken federal and tribal records spanning 5 continuous generations, a completeness of documentation that Osage genealogists point to as nearly unmatched among tribal family lines. His descendants remained recorded across every major role, from the original allotment enrollment through modern tribal membership records, a paper trail without a single missing generation. If your name is Standing Bear, your bloodline isn't just historically significant. It's the most completely documented Osage lineage that exists. 10 names, 10 bloodlines, all proof that your surname was never just a word. It was a record of which family, which band, and which piece of Osage history you actually descend from. Drop your surname in the comments and tell me which of these 10 bloodlines you might carry. Subscribe to Origins Decoded every week. Another name, another lineage nobody told you was yours.